Well, a very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you. Thank you so much for making the time to join us here this morning. Those of you that are joining us online, and those of you here at Stimson World Headquarters, it's a pleasure to see you all in person, especially. For those of you that may be new to Stimson, a really special welcome to you in particular. This is a pretty special place in my eyes. I'm paid to say that, Ambassador, but it is true. This is an organization that's been around for some 35 years, and we have spent that time not just admiring big, grand challenges around the world, but really rolling up our sleeves and operationalizing the solutions that we develop, testing our ideas in the field, and really working to make a difference. And that is the MO of our special guest here as well. So it's a special treat to have her. She is, of course, Ambassador Bonnie Jenkins, someone who has a zeal throughout her career for making a positive difference in the world around her. We only have an hour, so I want to spare you her extensive resume and CV, but needless to say, she has served her country both in and out of government for many years in philanthropy and academia, the NGO community. She was the State Department's coordinator for threat reduction. She served as general counsel to the 9/11 Commission. She was in the Naval Reserves. Yes, I know, you expected a 90-year-old woman, but she is not a 90-year-old woman, just a remarkable person who has, as I say, dedicated so much of her time to work for this great country. Her work has spanned as well a diverse cross-section of international security issues, nonproliferation, counterterrorism, public health issues, but also, and this is, I think, of particular resonance and importance for us at Stimson, she is someone who has dedicated to building a more diverse and representative world as well, where all people are treated with equality, fairly, and with respect. Most importantly, at least for me, I'm really proud to call Bonnie my friend. Ambassador, I'm so grateful to you for being here. So here's the order of battle here this morning. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to allow the ambassador to give a few framing remarks, and then she will join me for a quick back and forth question and answer, and then she is eager to hear from all of you, both online and in person. You can submit your questions online at stimson.org/questions. When we get to the Q&A, there will be a roving mic, and so we would ask you just to hold for a microphone before you ask your brief question. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Undersecretary of State for International Security, Ambassador Bonnie Jenkins.
Good morning, everyone. It's always great to be here. I have such a long and happy history with Stimson and with my colleague Brian Finley, who we've worked together in so many different iterations. So it's nice to be here to do this one today. Looking forward to having a discussion on international security and the great work that's being done at State Department, but really in the U.S. government overall, but particularly within my three bureaus at State Department. Things that we're doing that's promoting the SDGs, which people don't really think about or people don't always associate with the work that we do in the quote-unquote hard security area. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this. So thank you for having me, and a big thank you to Stimson Center, again, for hosting me today. Last month, I had the opportunity to attend the Sustainable Development Goals Summit during the UN General Assembly High-Level Week. Today, it is my honor to speak to you as the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security on how the three bureaus I oversee make progress toward the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. I know that many think that this may be out of the ordinary, how arms control and other areas of international security, or hard security, as I said, as it's often titled, are tied to sustainable development. But my hope is that we ignite a conversation that helps us to reimagine how we talk about issues related to security assistance, weapons of mass destruction, nonproliferation, disarmament, and arms control. I also hope that this will give us the space and opportunity to reinvigorate, and if not, remind all of us of the importance of supporting, promoting, and strengthening international security as a means and mechanism of peace and prosperity. The work conducted under my undersecretariat is principally in the areas of weapons of mass destruction and other security-related non-proliferation arms control, regional security, defense relations, space and emerging technologies, export controls, counterproliferation, capacity building, peacekeeping, as well as arms transfers and security assistance. Made up of 3 bureaus, the Political Military Affairs Bureau, the Arms Control Verification and Compliance Bureau, and the International Security and Non-Proliferation Bureau, I and my team also work across the department to advance implementation of the Australian-US-UK Security Partnership focused on peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, or also referred to as AUKUS. We are responsible for advancing U.S. national security objectives by building enduring peace and security partnerships and leading with foreign policy on our defense relations, enhancing strategic stability using tools such as arms control treaties, international agreements and organizations, transparency and confidence-building measures, sanctions and interdictions, and export controls, as I mentioned. Ultimately, these tools, along with capacity-building programs pursued by the Bureau of International Security and Non-Proliferation, or ISN, in concert with other USG stakeholders, serve to prevent the spread of weapons of mass destruction, their delivery systems, and destabilizing advanced conventional weapons capabilities. We are also equally responsible for creating guardrails or norms in anticipation of the use of space, emerging and future security risks brought about by the rapid advance of technology, as well as creating and maintaining enduring partnerships and alliances to uphold international law and the core principles of the United Nations Charter during these hinge moments in history. In doing so, we are also advancing the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. International peace and security are intersectional. What means security to one nation may not mean security to another. Where one person feels secure, another may face poverty, lack of education, opportunity, health care, and access to equal rights, no matter their gender. For some, security means a stable and prosperous economy. For others, their very right to exist is at stake, either because of their very identity or the climate impact on their borders. Thus, every day we aim to ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity, not just as it is described in SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, but across all of the SDGs. For we believe that prosperity is founded on peace, and our work on issues of international security provide the bedrock to help ensure peace and stability. So how deeply interconnected and mutually reinforcing are hard security objectives and the UN's SDGs to help meet global progress? Let us look at the measured impacts of the various programs and policies, bureau by bureau, within the T family, and how they directly contribute to the SDGs, to include combating food insecurity, promoting human, animal, and plant health, ensuring the full participation of women in leadership, safeguarding our environment, promoting affordable and clean energy, taking care of our oceans, and strengthening institutions to promote the rule of law, to name a few. Let us start by looking at hard lessons learned. The days, weeks, months, and years after a major military intervention are always harder than we imagine. Communities are shattered, lands are destroyed, and generations suffer from wounds of the past. Landmines and unexploded ordnance remain a deadly legacy and remainder of the conflict. However, through the dedicated work of the United States in addressing these war legacy issues, we are supporting communities, helping them to not just survive, but thrive and become sustainable. In particular, the humanitarian demining programs administered by the Bureau of Political Military Affairs is helping countries achieve their sustainable development goals. Long-term recovery truly begins when countries have the ability, the infrastructure, and the know-how to help themselves. As we continue to face the challenge of providing food security around the globe, which has been exacerbated by the illegal invasion of Ukraine, we must continue our efforts to support the removal of landmines and explosive rains of war from fertile lands. Most notably, funding, grant assistance, training programs, and capacity-building initiatives led by my Political Military Affairs Bureau to remove unexploded ordnance are provided to impact the countries around the world. In areas recovering from conflict, explosive ordnance pose a life-threatening barrier to safe water resources and agricultural lands, while also posing a risk to environmental ecosystems, including ecologically fragile environments. By clearing landmines and other explosive remnants of war, communities can create an environment in which to pursue zero hunger and allow access to safe drinking water, and they can protect life on land where they are free from the threat of injury or death, thus making progress towards SDG 2, 6, and 15. Capacity building, a focus for all three bureaus, is an incredibly effective and important element in the toolkit for sustainable development. Also in the case of the Bureau of Military Affairs, building the participation and capacity, especially of women, not only in the humanitarian mining sector, but also in the security sector, in international military training and education, in peacekeeping operations, and in the physical security and stockpile management sectors is essential. Promoting development through the active participation, leadership, and decision-making of women advances security. Study after study shows that women play a key role in creating a sustainable peace. Women bring different and valuable perspectives to the table, with solutions often rooted in strengthening communities through the inclusion and empowerment for all. For example, in Vietnam, I had the honor to meet with a very impressive group of female deminers whose work is the embodiment of what is good about the SDGs and what can be accomplished to promote development and prosperity. It also reflects the embodiment of Secretary Blinken's reminder to all of us in the department that diversity and inclusion makes American diplomacy stronger, smarter, and more creative. These women, through their leadership, have now empowered themselves and communities to increase development and sustainable land management for years to come. By promoting the participation of women in humanitarian demining, we are successfully making progress toward SDG 5 on gender equality. Moreover, our capacity building assistance supports our partners' military and civil institutions in multiple ways. Our support enables them to respond to natural disasters and enhance climate resilience, but also to ensure that they have strong institutions to combat terrorism, organized crime, and illicit trafficking. In turn, this furthers nonproliferation efforts by impeding access to advanced conventional weapons while leveraging the capabilities of allies, partners, and international organizations. Our capacity building overseas makes progress toward bolstering sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11, taking on climate action, SDG 13, and strengthening peace, justice, and strong institutions, SDG 16. Unlike so many challenges we face, the WMD challenge, and in particular the nuclear one, is a space in which we are fortunate to be able to draw upon wisdom built through tested experience to inform and strengthen our future efforts. Arms control is more than treaties. It is a set of tools and processes that avert arms buildups, promote stability and predictability, and strengthen strong, effective, and accountable institutions. The Bureau of Arms Control Verification and Compliance leads the United States diplomatic efforts to sustain strong multilateral institutions that cooperate in the face of today's conventional and unconventional weapons challenges, which strengthens SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. For instance, we are supporting countries to strengthen their national institutions as they work to develop implementation legislation for the Chemical Weapons Convention. This year, the United States completed destruction of all its declared chemical weapons stockpile. The world formally eliminated an entire category of weapons of mass destruction. Our stockpile destruction was a decades-long project with the close coordination of local, state, and federal government that considered the health and safety of local communities, the environmental impact on local and sensitive ecosystems, and the capacity building training and education of local workforces. In addition to SDG 16, by reducing potential illness and death from hazardous chemicals, we have also made progress towards SDG 3, good health and well-being. Partnerships are critical to our collective success under SDG 16. Advancing peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, the Australia-UK-US security partnership represents a deepening of some of our closest partnerships. We are working assiduously to find ways to bolster security cooperation and spark innovation, all while focused on peace and stability. Our success helps us lead to countries to their successes, furthering the positive U.S. leadership and efforts to constructively engage in the arms control and disarmament arena, as well as to preserve the international rule of law, prevent the undermining of international organizations and multilateral institutions, and promote their good, unbiased governance. I would say that our leadership also extends to strengthening gender and racial equality, not just in our own offices, but in multilateral fora as well. We advance the efforts to feature women and people of color in presentations and events, and bring gender-neutral language into various multilateral institutions, rules of procedures, and report statements, in turn making progress for SDG 5, gender equality stronger. Arms control and treaty organizations lay the groundwork for international cooperation that can be extended and offered to partner countries the expertise and support on security challenges. Extended deterrence partnerships are a part of that, as well as several cooperative international efforts, like the International Partnership for Nuclear Disarmament Verification, a strong collaboration among 31 countries to build capacity, increase awareness, identify and develop solutions to nuclear disarmament verification challenges, and the Creating an Environment in Nuclear Disarmament, CEND, an initiative of 42 countries, which acts as a confidence-building measure that enhances relations and partnerships amongst participating states and develops policy solutions for ongoing challenges related to nuclear disarmament efforts. These types of fora allow for inclusive innovation and sustains international partnerships and support of not just a security goal, but an educational one as well, advancing SDG 17 partnerships for goals. What is also interesting about our work on arms control is the impact it has on the environment, from underwater to the Arctic to space. Effective arms control measures can help curtail or avoid conflicts that could damage the environment through pollution of explosive remnants of war, new pathogens and toxins, and hazardous chemicals, or through indiscriminate mining, dangerous space and naval maneuvering, and the release of hazardous pollutants resulting from damage to or sinking of vessels during hostilities. We are also looking at ways to further enhance space security and ensure that the outer space remains a free and peaceful arena that will benefit humanity and provide prosperity, such as by not conducting destructive direct acid anti-satellite missile tests. 70 years ago, President Eisenhower spoke about the global community and how it must come together to apply the atoms to the art of peace. This was his Atoms of Peace speech, which soon became a guiding principle for how we must use nuclear energy, science, and technology for peaceful purposes. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, is a direct descendant of this speech, established in 1957 after a series of Atoms for Peace conferences to accelerate and enlarge the contribution of atomic energy to peace, health, and prosperity around the world. Its founding motto, Atoms for Peace, was broadened in recent years to Atoms for Peace and Development. Peaceful uses of nuclear energy was one of the 3 pillars of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT, which includes a commitment to expand and share the benefits of nuclear science and technology for serving the world's energy, climate, environmental health, and agricultural needs. The Bureau for International Security and Non-Proliferation oversees our support of the advancement of international cooperation on peaceful use, our efforts to promote safe and secure international trade to protect our critical technologies. One of the ways we are advancing America's nuclear policy priorities, including advancing peaceful uses of nuclear energy, is through our support of the IAEA. You may be familiar with the IAEA as the world's nuclear watchdog. Equally important but less frequent in global news headlines is the IAEA's work to promote the peaceful uses of nuclear science and technology, which I'm excited to highlight. The IAEA is the first stop for most countries seeking nuclear solutions for energy and development. Since 2010, the United States has provided over $640 million in extra budgetary funding and in-kind contributions to the IAEA for peaceful uses of activities, enabling dozens of countries to harness the peaceful power of the atom. In that respect, we look forward to the IAEA's 2024 Ministerial Conference on Technical Cooperation in Nuclear Sciences and Applications as an opportunity to draw greater political attention to the contribution of peaceful uses to sustainable development and to advance collaboration to strengthen its tie. The peaceful uses of nuclear energy and science and technology span across many fields. I recognize that nuclear energy is currently at the forefront of many discussions of energy security. The world needs clean, reliable, safe, and secure energy options to address the realities of climate change and move toward our shared net zero 2050 goals, while meeting increasing energy requirements. Civil nuclear energy is an important part of the mix. Advanced nuclear technologies, such as small modular reactors or SMRs, can help make this transition to a green economy with greater diversification and reliability in energy sources. They can be used for power generation, clean hydrogen production, industrial applications, process heat, desalination, or other uses. The U.S. supports nuclear newcomer countries in capacity building in a manner consistent with the IAEA milestones approach for implementing a responsible nuclear energy program through our foundational infrastructure for the responsible use of small modular reactor technology, or our FIRST program. With the United States leading the way, and while maintaining the highest standards of nuclear safety, security, and nonproliferation, SMRs are meaningful investments in long-term economic growth, including enabling advanced industrial development and generating jobs. The U.S. has provided $41.75 million toward the FIRST program since it was first announced in September 2023, has had over 125 FIRST capacity building engagements through 2023, and has trained over 1,750 nuclear experts and officials through 2023 on workshops, webinars, technical consultancies, study tours, and site visits. The U.S. and Japan jointly host the Winning an Edge through Cooperation in Advanced Nuclear Program, or WECAN, to deepen cooperation to support the development of advanced, safe, and secure nuclear reactor technologies in responsible third countries and toward net zero emission goals. In addition, ISN is leading Project FEDEX, which is accelerating the global clean energy transition by supporting feasibility studies and providing technical assistance to support the pursuit of the conversion of coal-fired power plants to reliable and safe zero-carbon SMR nuclear energy generation. On a more personal level, for many of us, is a transformative way nuclear medicine is combating cancer. The United States has contributed over $47 million to the IAEA to support countries with little or no access to cancer treatment facilities toward achieving the UN's SDG 3 and promoting good health and well-being. We are proud to be the largest donor country to the IAEA's Transformational Rays of Hope initiative, through which the IAEA is leapfrogging capacity building in countries with little to no current cancer diagnostic and treatment capability. This includes supporting the procurement of diagnostic imaging equipment and linear accelerators for radiotherapy treatments, as well as the training of radio-oncologists, technicians, and medical physicians to cultivate the necessary workforce to fully utilize these new facilities. By focusing on helping to provide access to these targeted, high-impact, and cost-effective interventions, our strong contribution to cancer care promotes equity and a higher quality for all life for everyone. Through the IAEA, the United States also substantially contributes to initiatives that use nuclear technologies to combat plastic pollution and ocean acidification, for a healthier, cleaner ocean supporting life below SDG 14, that build capacity for responsible water resource management in countries to enable access to clean water, SDG 6, that helps farmers protect plants from damaging insect pests, grow more food using new and improved plant varieties, safeguard the health of livestock, and improve animal reproduction and breeding practices to combat food security, or SDG 2, and improve life on Earth, and so much more. But we can do more, and we must. Recognize the importance of engaging with diverse stakeholders, not only from research and academia, but also the development community and private sector. The United States launched the Sustained Dialogue on Peaceful Uses in August 2022 at the Review Conference of the NPT. We created the Sustained Dialogue in partnership with the United Kingdom and with support from a large number of our NPT non-proliferation treaty countries to find new avenues of cooperation and dialogue to expand access to peaceful application of nuclear science and technology to help countries in their pursuit of the SDGs. The Sustained Dialogue seeks to demonstrate the essential role that the NPT plays in not only stemming the spread of nuclear weapons, but in facilitating access to transformative technologies and skills that can improve lives. In this way, the Sustained Dialogue demonstrates that hard security and soft security are two sides of the same coin and can work and must work and make progress on both at the same time. And as we promote innovative ways to use nuclear science and technology in support of the SDGs, we are also working to protect our other sensitive technology from exploitation and strengthen national institutions to counter destabilizing transfers of military-related capability and to counter terrorism. We do this by implementing export controls to protect legitimate trade and scientific cooperation from exploitation for illicit proliferation purposes, as required by all states under UN Security Council Resolution 1540, which then also creates opportunities for value-added trade and scientific exchanges, leading to improved national incomes and economic development. We also reinforce international counterterrorism efforts and strengthen related international capabilities through promoting countries' use of science-based partner-enabled approaches to weapons of massive terrorism and emerging technology threat responses. Such capacity work is a part of our work. In the Bureau of International Security and Nonproliferation, we train stakeholders on establishing and applying national investigative and scientific resources to terrorism cases and criminal prosecutions involving chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, CBRN materials, and related asymmetric or disruptive threats. These efforts include training partners on biosafety, biosecurity, molecular diagnostics, and related nonproliferation capacity building efforts. We seek to educate foreign health workforces on practices for early detection and control of high-consequence pathogens to fight against any communicable diseases that threaten global health. We also help countries develop chemical security curricula to strengthen security education, equipping graduates to apply security practices and skills in the workplace. Gender equity plays a big role here as well, as the United States presses for the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in peacekeeping, conflict prevention, and peace-building efforts, consistent with the UN mandate, as well as the use of nuclear and other technologies. For sustainable development, the inclusion of gender-neutral language in multilateral fora, support for women's regional networks, and building women's championships in WMD. It is why I have taken the opportunity to advocate for diverse inclusion gender representation at every available multilateral forum over the past year: the NPT Review Conference, the BWC Review Conference, and the CWC Review Conference. So we, the global community, have set a high bar of achievement for an unprecedented project. 193 countries working toward the Sustainable Development Goals to improve lives of all people and the planet we share. Our governments are united on a plan of action for peace and prosperity and have committed to uphold and strengthen the values, principles, and institutions that have enabled so much stability, prosperity, and growth over the last 35 years. We are halfway to the 2030 goal and deadline, and we still have a long way to go to meet our SDG targets. Certainly, the challenges we face are exacerbated in this pivotal moment of history, making it more difficult for us to meet the goals we have collectively set out to achieve. Forging international cooperation has become more complex because of the rising geopolitical tensions and increased global problems, but we need to keep our eyes focused on achieving the goal and continuing to work together alongside each other for peace and prosperity. As I have shared today, even in an area like hard security, where you may think there are weak links to the SDGs, we find quite the contrary to be true. The core precept of our what, why, and how are based on partnership, international law, and shared values, and a common vision for the future. We will continue to apply the benefits of our work in keeping the world secure to advance peace, security, and development. As Secretary Blinken said last month, the decisions we make today will shape the future to come. Though America's global leadership is essential for a more free, open, and prosperous era for everyone around the world, we are determined to work with our partners, allies, industry, civil society, and others, including those who may not agree with us on everything, as long as we are all committed to solving together our shared challenges in international security and keeping the promises we made to each other and to the planet for peace, prosperity, and development. Thank you so much.
Ambassador, thank you for that. I will say it is rare to hear the Undersecretary for International Security talking about response to national disasters, treatment of cancer. So it's a wonderful and really, I think, refreshing turn. It's especially, I was excited to host you here on this particular topic. When I had a real job here at Stimson, I was transfixed by this kind of false division that we've seen, false conflict, if you will, between security and development, right? We assume that those that live in the security world are the antithesis of development. So let me share a couple of facts that you know well. About 9.2% of the world's population, it's about 719 million people, are living on a daily income of less than $2.15 a day, below the poverty level. More than 1.5 million people worldwide are dying from vaccine-preventable diseases each year. Another 250,000 die as a result of firearms incidents. That was before the war, the statistic before the war in Ukraine even. Much more of the world, as you know, struggle with lack of access to education, with lack of access to clean water, affordable energy, and so on, and so forth. So it makes, I think, those statistics draw for me a stark reality between the individual reality of so much of humanity and the challenges that you and your bureau are being called upon to answer, oftentimes in the weapons of mass destruction. Right? So we launched a program run by a colleague of mine here at Stimson, Ode Darnell, focused on the Global South. So when I speak to her about your remit at the State Department, what can I tell? Why should she care? Why should countries of the Global South care about this work?
Because they do. In many of the bilaterals that I have with countries, they will look at me and say, so how does this work? How does this work in development? How is all of this helping the threats and the challenges and the issues that I face every day? So I get that question. And one of the things that I don't think we've done enough in the U.S. and in my department and in other departments in the U.S. that do work on capacity building is really bring that message home. It's really come back with yeah, these are important issues, but one, we recognize that there are different perceptions of security. But let me tell you how we are helping. Let me tell you what we are doing that do advance some of the goals and issues that concern you. So the reality is that countries do ask. And they do want to know. And I get that more and more these days in my bilateral with countries in the Global South in terms of the issues that I bring. So when I say something about, and I talk about the importance of the non-proliferation regime, and they will, very often there's a strong concern about peaceful uses. That's always been a big issue, and making sure that peaceful uses are continuing, which of course it's a third pillar, it's one of the 3 pillars of the NPT. But then I say, well, there's actually a lot that we are doing and we are putting into this effort and we are contributing on issues that you do care about. And, you mentioned cancer. Cancer is a big issue in some countries in the Global South that don't have the capacity to really deal with cancer and all of its manifestations. So there's a lot that we're doing and putting money and working with entities, the IAEA and others, to promote their rays of hope specifically. But there's also a lack of understanding of that. There's a lack of understanding in the U.S. about what we do. There's a lack of understanding internationally of what we do. I talked to DG Grossi from the IAEA Director Grossi, and we talk about how we are trying to get more information out there. They have wonderful glossies that they show all the work they're doing in food security and water sanitation. All these things that we're using nuclear energy for, that are the things that a lot of our colleagues in the Global South care about. So it's really making the connection clear and helping them understand that we are focused on it. That is an important issue. We do care about the SDGs. There's a lot that's happening in the State Department, for example, outside of my bureaus that we do on this, but this is related to, like you said, the quote-unquote hard security. Yeah, we're doing things too. Yeah.
No, it struck me in your comments, this link between this dual benefit, right? Some of us would characterize the work of ISN, of other bureaus within state as hard security, right? Whereas the recipient may be looking at this as, it's a development, it's a trade facilitation, it's about public health, it's about, so you were in your hometown of New York City earlier this week, and you delivered a speech to First Committee at UNGA. And I want to talk about what you said there. You said, and I'm going to quote you, multilateral institutions like the UN have an important role to play. That role is at risk. The health and stability of the global arms control and non-proliferation regime is at risk. We all know this to be true, and yet we have not moved with the urgency required. So I want to ask you, we have spent a lot of time here at Stimson. We have a program looking at global governance and trying to help multilateral institutions become fit for purpose to meet 21st century challenges, including addressing the SDGs. You spoke today of the SDGs. In New York, you also talked about the Fissile Material Cutoff Treaty, the norm of non-use on radiological weapons, and of other hard security issues. Does the UN even have a role anymore? I mean, you're a busy woman, yet you took the time to go to the UN to talk about the SDGs, to talk about some of these hard security issues. But yet, I think some in this town have concluded the UN is worthless. Yeah, we've moved past the UN. Why did you spend time there?
Well, I think people have different views about the UN. I think people have their own biases about the UN. But there should be a recognition of the role of multilateral institutions overall in terms of you need a place. This is just basically, you need a forum to bring people together, to bring countries together, to try to address different issues. And naturally, they're going to be in places where there's going to be people who sit in the seats with the placard in front of them, come with their own viewpoint based on the challenges, the culture, the background, how they're seeing the world. For some, sitting in a room where there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of disagreement may seem like a waste of time. But that's how we get agreements. That's the process. The process works better when you have the inclusiveness of the different countries, of the different viewpoints. That's the value of a multilateral forum, is that if you don't have that, then you won't have countries who can input, and they will say that. They will say, I wasn't there. This does not reflect me. So as challenging as you see, my mom often says, "Why you guys do a lot of talking?" And I said, "Yeah, well, first of all, I'm in the State Department, so we do a lot of talking." But that's how you get from A to B. You can't. There is no shortcut that's going to be agreeable to all countries unless you put everyone in, and that naturally creates some slowness because you got to go through the process. But in the end, if you can get to an agreement that reflects the different viewpoints, people are going to be much more committed to adhering to them. And if they see somewhere that they know they've been heard, and they see something in there that reflects their voice. So that will always be the case. And if we don't have it, then what do you have? I mean, it's already challenged. The role is challenging right now. A lot of things are changing in international security space. But if you don't have a multilateral forums, then what do you have? Then you have no way of trying to bring these ideas together. You have no way of trying to promote some kind of stability. And that's what the value of these entities are. And it allows one to do that, countries to do that.
So years ago, Ambassador, when you walked through the office of an individual who worked on international development issues as a security person, they would immediately put their hand on their wallet, right, waiting to be raided. And I wonder if you have witnessed, as you circulated up at UNGA, as you talk particularly to countries of the Global South, how receptive are they to someone who has a title with international security in her signature blog, coming in and talking about some of these issues? Are they reluctant? Are they reticent to engage?
I thought a lot of it is how you approach it. I think if you go in with an understanding and with an idea that you're promoting, as I was saying, two sides of the same coin, when we're talking about security and development. There was one time we talked about the 3Ds, defense, development, and diplomacy. And that kind of got a coin around how you work, how you need all three of these things to make success in the international environment. There's other things you need too, but you need the 3Ds. And so you still, in building from that, if you walk into a room presenting the ideas that we all are going to work together, there are many challenges that exist in the world. And we want to try to address as many as we can. We're not going to say that one is more important than the other. We're going to say, how do we address these together? And there's different types of threats. And there may be some that you see more challenging because of your threat perception. And there are some that we may think is more challenging because of where we are and the way we come into the room and our threat perception. But we should try to find a way that we can address all of them. And as we know, with climate change and food security and things like that, the focus on them and the challenges have increased, obviously. So it doesn't serve anybody's purpose to try to put them on a scale of priority. I think it's more important to address them and say, these are things that we all need to think about. How do we work together to address these threats. And we know that you care for the nuclear side. We know that you care a lot about peaceful uses because we know how much you see the value of nuclear energy, you know. But the ways we can use nuclear energy has progressed so much in the last 10 years. This can help you, you know, and as long as it's done safe, secure, and in a non-proliferation way, we can work together on that. So I think a lot depends on the way you walk in the room and the way you approach it.
So I want to turn to the audience here in a minute, but if I don't ask this question, and I'm sure it's a question you are very tired of answering, and I want to keep the focus on the SDGs, and we'll come back to it, but I have to ask you this question because otherwise someone will. And I'm sure you can answer this in your sleep at this point, but just in a couple of years, of course, by 2026, there will be no constraints on the arsenals of the United States, Russia, and of course China. We're in the midst of a war in Ukraine that by some estimates could drag on for years, according to some analysts. Do we have a hope of getting Russia to the table?
Well, the one caveat I'll say, there is no restraint if we don't get everyone back at the table to renegotiate what happens, after 2026. There's always hope. I mean, I think and I always tell people, if you work in these areas of hard security, you always see the glass as half full. Because if you didn't, you would not do it. Okay. So there's always hope, and I think we have to always try to figure out, you know, how can that happen? Now, right now, obviously, with the war in Ukraine, sitting down to discuss the future of the START after 2026 is very challenging. But we have been very clear, and so has National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is very clear, that we are willing to sit down and talk about nuclear issues. We certainly want to get back to the full implementation of the New START Treaty. We are committed to that. We see it as very important to our national security still. It's an international legal obligation that we have, one that the Russians have. And so we are very serious about that, but we have also made clear that we're willing to have conversations generally about nuclear issues because of the importance of them. And so that's kind of where we stand. We know the value of it and importance of it.
China? Can you say a word about China?
China, you know, in the same speech by NSA Sullivan, he also said that we're certainly open to having conversations with China on these issues. And we've been very open, and we've said it very many times of our interest in engaging Beijing on conversations on these issues of security, hard security. So we haven't yet gotten to the point that those conversations are having in a bilateral way. But we are still seeking a way to talk to the PRC on these issues.
So I'm going to turn to the audience here. I'm going to be selfish here, and my colleague Nidara Yusuf, who is both here, but also very wisely submitted a question online to make sure that she had the opportunity. I want to turn to Nidara first. Sorry, right at the back. If you could raise your hand, Nidara. And my selfish reason for this, one, because she's whip smart and she's going to make Stimson look good, and most importantly, but also she's going to model good behavior by identifying herself and asking a brief question.
No pressure. Hi, Nidara Yusuf. I work with the Stimson Center and the Global Governance Innovation Network. So, Ambassador, last week at the SDG Summit, one of the big questions that kept coming up was this question of sanctions, or some people refer to them as UCMs, and it sort of held up negotiations as well. I'd be curious to hear, does the US think pivoting out of sanctions and UCMs, quote unquote, is sort of the way to go in securing sustainable peace, or is it just an inevitable part of the toolkit for now?
I think a lot depends on, I couldn't make a blanket statement about that because I think you'll have to look at which sanctions, the purpose of the sanctions. We tend to try to be not too expansive in the sanctions, to try to be limited and to be purposeful about sanctions when we do have those, and they do play a very important role in terms of international security and national security issues. So I think sanctions will remain a part of the wide number of things in the toolkit in terms of how we try to address challenges that exist in the international community. But how much if we loosen this, I mean, I think that's an issue to be discussed. As you said, I know it's come up several times in terms of the role that they play regarding SDGs and a lot of other issues. So on a blanket way, I wouldn't say that yes, getting rid of sanctions would do that. I think it's worth looking into. But I think sanctions will remain a part of how we address some of the challenges that we have.
So Ambassador, what I'm going to propose here, we have a packed room and we have about 500 people online as well, all submitting questions. So I'm going to merge this and take a couple of questions and then try to get as many as we can in, ma'am. And if you again could just identify yourself as well.
Good morning. Good morning, Jessica Taylor. It's nice to see you again, Madam Ambassador. So I am a non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council and doing my PhD at Princeton on East Asia security. But just prior to that, I was at U.S. Forces Korea, so that's where this question's coming from. I'm curious of your thoughts about how the NCG and EDSG work together to address South Korea's security concerns, especially as we try to maintain the non-proliferation regime.
The JCG and EDSG, right.
And then let's go just right next door as well, take the second question, and then we'll let you answer.
My name is Sang-min. I'm a reporter from the Radio Free Asia. I have a question about the North Korea ICBM test. There is a suggestion that to prevent North Korea from testing ICBM is to declare a policy of preemptive actions. For example, we have a right to shoot down North Korean missile heading to Japan, Hawaii, or Western United States. So what do you think about this suggestion of a preemptive actions?
Easy questions, Ambassador. Huh?
So for the JCG and the EDSCG, these are both entities where the U.S. and South Korea are working to promote our extended deterrence in the region. We just had an EDSCG meeting. I was just in Korea maybe 3 weeks ago for the EDSCG, which was very successful. Both of these are, as I said, ways in which we are working to strengthen our extended deterrence, to make it very clear, particularly to domestic audiences in South Korea and to others, the commitment that we have to our extended deterrence posture with South Korea. So both of them really are really to do that. The real difference, we've only had one meeting of the JCG. And the way I see it, it's a more focused discussion on some of the issues related to nuclear issues and extended deterrence. EDSCG is we bring in a much broader perspective, look at a lot of different issues related to the relationship regarding extended deterrence. So that's probably a quick and easy way to describe it without going into a lot of detail. But that's kind of the way I would look at it, yeah.
Others here. I'm going to come back to you, sir. Let's, Barbara and my colleague. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, on the.
Sorry, Ambassador.
I guess the best way to answer that is the U.S. and South Korea, and you're talking about a preemptive strike by. Okay. The way I would look at this is the U.S. and all three countries, U.S., Japan, and South Korea, we have a very strong bilateral relationships in terms of working with Japan, working with South Korea, in dealing and addressing issues of North Korea. So what I would say is I'm not going to agree to saying that preemptive strike is the way to go. I think I would just say that we have a very close relationship, strong discussions on the way in which we want to address North Korea and the North Korea threat and their ICBMs and all the tests that they're doing. So that's not something that we are addressing right now. I'll just leave it at that. So.
We'll do two right here.
Yeah.
Oh, right back there.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay. All right. Barbara Slavin, I'm with the Stimson Center. It's a pleasure to see you here, Ambassador. My question is about the suggestion that the United States might provide nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. There are a lot of concerns about the proliferation aspects of this. MBS has himself said that he would get a nuclear weapon if Iran does. Why is the United States even considering this possibility of providing enrichment? I'm not talking about perhaps a reactor for power purposes. Thanks.
Yeah, okay, good.
Sorry, Ambassador, we'll go right next door as well.
Thank you so much. My name is Oleg Shakirov. I'm a PhD student at SAIS. I have a question about the recent U.S. proposal to Russia and China to observe that the United States is not doing nuclear tests. Can you speak more about this initiative, and have you heard anything from Russia and China, and do you expect Russia and China to reciprocate?
Yes, recently my colleagues from the Department of NSA talked about ways in which are there possible ways for CBMs or to I guess, I don't know if verification is the right word, but more confidence building measures on nuclear tests. My understanding is that we haven't gotten a response on that. So it's out there. It's something that we could think about. It's something that could be considered. But my understanding at this point, and I would have to talk to my colleagues at NSA, I don't know if there's been a response to that yet. Yeah. And on the other question, once again, something I don't have a lot of responses to. I mean, we talked to a number of countries on issues of SMRs, on reactors. It's something that we're doing with a lot of countries right now to discuss, issues like that. And so without going into a lot of detail, I could just say that this is something that we're having a discussion on, but as far as where that's going to go and the details, I don't really have a lot of those that I could share. So,
but no decisions, obviously.
No decisions on that.
Let's go right here, and then I think I saw a hand behind as well.
Hi, excuse me. William Lawrence, American University, former state. I worked in NEA, INR, and OES, and closely with all three of your bureaus. And one of the things they did at NEA was create TSCTP, the Trans-Saharan Counterterrorism Initiative. And it looked on paper a lot like how you're talking about, but the soft side never really got funded. And writ large, we have a hard time with Congress and with the American public sort of selling them on, I would suggest soft security isn't the right term, but selling them on all these really important non-hard security things, and they rarely don't get funded, and you end up with this skewed world where the Pentagon does tens of thousands of humanitarian projects around the world every year because other things aren't getting funded. So my question is, what have you found helps explain to Congress and to the American public, foreign policy for the middle class, that this basket of SDG-related issues actually is going to help make them more secure? Because I haven't really found those arguments.
Yeah.
Good question. And we'll do one more right on the aisle here, sir. Yes.
Thank you. This is Ginny Kim from VOA Korean Service. My question is about North Korea. North Korea is moving in the opposite direction of disarmament and non-proliferation, and it seems to be military and nuclear expansion. So, Ambassador Jenkins, what is your perspective and what is your possible plan of action or diplomatic approach or conversation?
Okay, so I'm not sure I understand the question. So you're saying that North Korea is moving toward arms control? No.
Opposite direction of disarmament is going to be, it seems to be nuclear expansion and armament.
So North Korea is going toward expansion of nuclear, not disarm. Yeah, the opposite. Okay. And so what is my view on that? On their building and what do I view about North Korea building more weapons? Is that the question?
What is your view, your perspective, and what is your action plan?
Okay. So since President Biden came into office, one of the things that he made very clear is that the U.S. is open to having discussions with North Korea. And one of the phrases he used was anytime, any place, to have discussions with North Korea. Unfortunately, as you probably know, North Korea has not really taken him up on that. And he has remained, we have remained very clear on the desire to have conversations with North Korea on denuclearization. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And so one of the things that we are not able to do a lot on that, because you have to have somebody willing to sit down with you on the other side of the table to have these conversations about denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and that really hasn't happened. So what we have been able to do, as I was saying earlier, is that has a reverberation effect, of course, in the region, and that has created more concern in South Korea, obviously, which is one of the reasons why we strengthen our extended deterrence, and we have these EDSDGs, extended deterrence discussions. But until we really have a willing participant on the other side that wants to have these conversations, it makes it very complex to have a real discussion and negotiation on denuclearization. So that's pretty much where we are. Yeah.
And our colleague here on the SDGs.
Well, the interesting thing about the work that we're doing in my bureaus is a lot of the work we're doing some of the work we do, like the landmines I talk about, has the effect, when you get rid of the landmines, it has these positive effects of promoting SDGs. You know, they can build schools. One amazing tweet that my political military bureau had was about how getting rid of landmines has allowed more endangered species to be in a particular area. So in that case, it's been good because we didn't have to make the argument. You know, they understand the value, the Congress understands the value of and importance of the hard security work. And so some of the stuff that I talk about is some of the benefits of it. But then you have other things that we are starting to have more conversations on this. And I think when you have, like the UN event 2 weeks ago, the high-level week, was so much focus was on SDGs. And you have Secretary Blinken talking about SDGs, and you have other leaders talking about SDGs, and of course, Samantha Powell talking about SDGs. This raises the attention and also forces more discussions that we can have on the Hill about why these things are important, not just through USAID, of course, but also for some of the other entities. But it's also an education process within the U.S. It's also an education process within the U.S. government of making these connections. And, you know, others, like I just did this speech, other entities who are not the development folks saying, oh, we're doing these other things, and by the way, they are promoting SDGs. It's not what people are really thinking. It's not the natural way that I think if you're in hard security, you're thinking. But that's definitely changing, particularly I know at State Department, because we have to recognize that there's a large part of the world that care about these SDGs. They're global issues. We all need to care about them, whether we're talking about hard security or not. We should care about climate change, gender issues, you know, life underwater, biodiversity. These are all going to impact us. And so we have to do our own education to understand how, as a global community, we have to deal with all of these issues. We have to make sure countries don't develop nuclear weapons and test and use them. We have to make sure countries get rid of chemical weapons and biological weapons. But at the same time, there's benefits to getting rid of chemical weapons. There's benefits of not having to put so much money in nuclear weapons. There's benefits that help the SDGs. So I think we just have to help change our way of thinking and seeing how it also helps the Global South to see us more as partners and see us as more as, you know, you don't just care about this, you really care about these other things. And like I said, there's lots of folks in the U.S. government, you know, we have a whole department, USAID, that's about development. So there's a lot of entities already working on these issues. But I think it helps if when I sit down in a room, I can say these are all the things we're doing, because then they can say, oh, you really do care about that. And when they say in these hard security meetings, you're not doing anything on SDGs, I can say, oh, yes, we are. Yes, we are. We're doing a lot. And let me just give you the list of all the things we're doing and how much we're spending on it and how much we're providing to international organizations to do this work.
So, Ambassador, let me ask you a quick exit question now that we've run out the clock, unfortunately. But all of the challenges that you reference, climate change, weapons proliferation, these are no longer just government problems either. And you have spent a lot of your time in government, but you've also spent a lot of your time outside of government, private industry, and in the NGO community and elsewhere. For those of us that are now on the outside, give us a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain. How can we be most helpful in addressing, in both interfacing with government on these challenges, but also in helping to carry water towards their resolution?
Well, I think maybe helping to bridge the gap. I mean, I think there's lots of entities in the NGO that work on one or the other. And God knows we need the folks outside government working on both. But some places like this, which have an understanding of both sides, can help us make the case for the international community on the way in which the work we're doing is helping our countries in the Global South, because I think that there's a lack of understanding. Just, you know, when I sit and at the UN, I listen to speeches, there's an automatic statement by some countries that, you know, and, I mean, we are behind. As a global community, we're behind on our SDG commitments and what we have to do, so that's a given. But I think there's an automatic statement that, you know, the global north doesn't care as much, or the global north is not doing as much, or, and I think we have to have a better understanding. I think there's a lot that we need to do. I think there's a lot we're doing. I think there's a lot we need to do more of. But I think the dialogue needs to change a little bit, and it needs to be a lot more of an understanding of how we are working together and get beyond the normal statements that we make in these multilateral organizations. Some of it's for show, so that happens. It's just the way it is. But I think we have to get beyond that and have much more of a discussion on some of these issues and how to relate.
Ambassador Bonnie Jenkins, you are always welcome on this stage.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.